In the autumn of 216 BC, a young Roman officer stands on a hillside above the town of Cannae, looking down at a battlefield where something has just happened that will not be repeated in scale for centuries. Between 50 and 70,000 Roman soldiers lie dead in a single afternoon, encircled and butchered by an army half their size, commanded by a Carthaginian general whose tactical genius has just produced the most complete annihilation of a field army in the history of ancient warfare. The officer is 17 years old. His name is Publius Cornelius Scipio, and his father, also named Publius Cornelius Scipio, is one of the Roman commanders who has survived the slaughter by cutting his way out with a small body of cavalry. The young man will spend the next 14 years of his life becoming the general who defeats Hannibal Barca, and in doing so will demonstrate one of the most important lessons in the history of strategic conflict: that the way to defeat an unbeatable opponent is not to fight him on the ground he has chosen, using the methods he has perfected, but to become, more completely than he ever managed, the thing that made him dangerous in the first place. Hannibal Barca crosses the Alps into Italy in 218 BC with an army that Roman intelligence has significantly underestimated. And over the following 3 years, he inflicts on the Roman Republic a series of defeats that bring it closer to total destruction than anything in its subsequent history until the crisis of the 3rd century AD. At Trebia, at Lake Trasimene, and finally at Cannae, Hannibal demonstrates a tactical repertoire that no Roman commander has an answer for. The double envelopment, the feigned retreat, the exploitation of terrain and weather, and above all, the psychological manipulation of enemy commanders who consistently walk into traps, because Hannibal understands Roman military culture, Roman political pressures, and Roman commanders' individual psychologies better than the Romans understand his. The Roman response to Cannae is, in retrospect, the decision that saves the Republic and eventually destroys Carthage. Though it does not look like strategic brilliance at the time, it looks like desperation, and in the immediate aftermath, it largely is. Rome does not sue for peace, an option that any rational calculation of the military balance might suggest. Instead, the Senate adopts what history calls the Fabian strategy, named for Quintus Fabius Maximus, who had argued before Cannae and continues to argue after it that Rome cannot defeat Hannibal in a set-piece battle and must instead refuse to fight him directly, harassing his supply lines, denying him decisive engagements, and waiting for the structural weaknesses of his position to accumulate against him. The strategy is deeply unpopular. It is, after all, a strategy of enduring humiliation rather than seeking the glorious battlefield vindication that Roman political culture rewards. But it survives because the alternative, fighting Hannibal again on his terms, has already been tried 3 times and has produced 3 catastrophes. What the Fabian strategy identifies, correctly, is the structural problem that Hannibal's invasion of Italy cannot solve without external support that never arrives. Hannibal has no secure supply line back to Carthage, no reliable reinforcements, and no capacity to besiege Rome itself. Hannibal can win battles indefinitely. He cannot convert those victories into Rome's capitulation, because Rome's constitutional structure, unlike the city-states that Mediterranean warfare has previously conquered through decisive battle, does not collapse when its army is destroyed. Rome simply raises another army, drawing on a manpower base across Italy that Hannibal's diplomatic efforts only partially succeed in reducing. This is the first and most consequential structural fact of the war. Hannibal is winning every battle and losing the war, because the war is not being decided on the battlefields where he is tactically supreme. It is being decided in the recruiting grounds of Italy, in the shipyards of Rome, in the treasury funding new legions, and in the political cohesion of the Roman-Italian alliance system that, despite Cannae, does not disintegrate as completely as Hannibal needs it to. Publius Cornelius Scipio, the young officer who survived Cannae and will become known to history as Scipio Africanus, absorbs this lesson more completely than any other Roman commander of his generation. And he absorbs a second lesson alongside it that will define his entire approach to defeating Hannibal. If Rome cannot beat Hannibal's army in Italy, it can beat Carthage's position in the wider Mediterranean war, striking at the sources of Carthaginian strength that Hannibal's Italian campaign depends on, and that Carthage cannot adequately defend while its most talented general is occupied fighting in Italy. Scipio's father and uncle are both killed in Spain in 211 BC, fighting a campaign against Carthaginian forces there that has gone badly enough that Rome's position on the Iberian Peninsula is on the verge of collapse. Spain matters enormously to the strategic calculation of the war, for reasons that are fundamentally economic rather than purely military. The silver mines of southern Spain are the financial foundation of Carthaginian military power, funding the mercenary armies, the Carthaginian and allied fleets, and the diplomatic payments that Carthage uses to maintain its alliance network across the western Mediterranean. Spain is also the recruiting ground for a significant portion of Hannibal's infantry and cavalry, the Iberian and Celtiberian warriors whose quality Hannibal has relied on throughout his Italian campaign. If Rome can seize Spain, it does not merely deny Carthage a distant province. It cuts off the silver that funds Hannibal's war and the manpower reserve that replaces his losses. The Roman Senate, in a decision that reflects both the desperation of the military situation in Spain and a genuine recognition of Scipio's unusual talent, grants the 25-year-old an extraordinary military command, proconsular imperium, a level of authority normally reserved for men decades older and after a full career of magistracies, and sends him to Spain in 210 BC to salvage what remains of the Roman position there. What follows is the first demonstration of Scipio's particular genius, which is not fundamentally about inventing new tactics, but about studying his enemy's methods with an attention to detail that most Roman commanders, confident in the inherent superiority of Roman military organization, have never bothered to apply. Scipio's capture of New Carthage, Carthago Nova, the principal Carthaginian base in Spain, and the administrative center from which Carthaginian Spain's silver revenue and military logistics are organized, in 209 BC is executed with careful intelligence gathering, an understanding of tidal patterns that allow an assault across ground the defenders believe protected by water, and a speed of execution that catches the divided Carthaginian commanders in Spain unable to concentrate their forces in time. The capture delivers into Roman hands the Carthaginian treasury in Spain, the hostages Carthage has been using to guarantee Spanish tribal loyalty, and the administrative infrastructure through which Carthaginian Spain's silver revenue has been organized. Scipio releases the hostages rather than holding them for ransom, a gesture calculated to convert Spanish tribal loyalty toward Rome at exactly the moment Carthaginian control of the peninsula is visibly weakening. The Battle of Ilipa in 206 BC completes what New Carthage began, and it is here that Scipio demonstrates that he has studied Hannibal's tactical repertoire closely enough to reproduce it against Hannibal's own countrymen. Facing a numerically superior Carthaginian force, Scipio arranges his battle line in a formation that inverts the conventional deployment, placing his weaker Spanish allied troops in the center, where they are expected to hold rather than win, while his veteran Roman legions on the flanks execute a double envelopment that collapses the Carthaginian formation from both sides simultaneously. It is, in its essential structure, Cannae reversed, Hannibal's own tactical innovation, turned against a Carthaginian army by a Roman commander who has spent years studying exactly how and why it worked the first time. By the end of 206 BC, Carthaginian Spain no longer exists as a functioning military or political entity. The silver mines, the manpower reserves, and the naval bases that had sustained Hannibal's war effort from across the western Mediterranean are entirely in Roman hands. Scipio returns to Rome in 205 BC as the most celebrated general of his generation and immediately proposes the strategy that will define the final phase of the war and that many senior senators, including the elderly Fabius Maximus, oppose with genuine conviction: an invasion of North Africa itself, carrying the war directly to Carthage, rather than continuing to fight Hannibal in Italy on the assumption that eventually his position there will simply erode. The opposition to this plan is not merely political jealousy of a young general's ambition, though that is present too. It reflects a genuine strategic disagreement about where Roman resources should be committed, given that Hannibal remains undefeated in southern Italy, with an army that, while reduced from its earlier strength, has still never lost a major battle against a Roman force in the field. Scipio's argument, which eventually prevails through political maneuvering and his track record in Spain, is built on the same structural insight that has guided his career. Carthage cannot sustain an existential threat to its own territory while simultaneously funding Hannibal's position in Italy. An African invasion forces Carthage to choose between defending its homeland and continuing to support a general whose Italian campaign, however brilliant, has never actually threatened Rome's survival the way a direct assault on Carthage threatens Carthage's. Scipio is proposing to do to Carthage what Hannibal's crossing of the Alps did to Rome: bring the war to the enemy's home territory in a manner Carthage's own strategic calculations have never adequately prepared to withstand, because Carthage has spent 15 years assuming the war would be decided in Italy or Spain rather than on its own soil. Scipio lands in North Africa in 204 BC with an army that the Senate has granted him only after considerable political resistance. And the campaign that follows demonstrates the same combination of military skill and political sophistication that characterized his Spanish campaigns. He forms an alliance with Massinissa, a Numidian prince whose cavalry, light, fast, and superbly skilled in the hit-and-run tactics of North African horse warfare, will prove decisive at the war's climactic battle. He conducts a campaign of raiding and diplomatic pressure that destabilizes Carthaginian control over its own Numidian allies, converting a portion of the light cavalry that Carthage has relied on for generations into a Roman asset. And critically, his presence in Africa achieves precisely the strategic effect he predicted. The Carthaginian Senate, facing a Roman army in North Africa for the first time in the war, recalls Hannibal from Italy in 203 BC, ending 15 years of Carthaginian military presence on Italian soil, not through Roman battlefield victory, but through the strategic pressure of a threat to Carthage's own survival that Hannibal's Italian campaign was never designed to address. Hannibal's return to Africa and the confrontation between the two generals at Zama in October 202 BC is the encounter the entire war has been building toward, decided as much by strategic and logistical position as by tactics on the day. Hannibal, for the first time in his career, commands an army not composed primarily of the veteran troops he personally trained over a decade. His Italian veterans are present, but reduced after years of attrition, and his army at Zama is supplemented by newly raised Carthaginian levies and mercenaries lacking the cohesion that made his earlier armies so effective. Scipio commands veteran Roman legions who trained together for years in Spain and Africa, supplemented by Massinissa's Numidian cavalry that replaces the horse superiority Carthaginian armies had relied on throughout the war, including at Cannae, where superior cavalry had been decisive. The battle itself demonstrates Scipio's complete internalization of the tactical lessons that Hannibal's campaigns had taught the Roman military establishment over 15 years of costly defeats. Hannibal deploys 80 war elephants in front of his line, hoping to use them to break the Roman formation before infantry contact begins, a tactic that has produced results in previous Carthaginian battles. Scipio, anticipating this, arranges his infantry in a formation with wide lanes running through the depth of his lines, allowing the charging elephants to be channeled harmlessly through the Roman formation rather than trampling it, while his light troops harass the animals with javelins from the flanks of these lanes, turning many of the elephants back into Hannibal's own advancing lines in confusion. The infantry engagement that follows is a grinding, evenly matched struggle between two forces of comparable size and quality, the kind of direct, attritional contest that Hannibal has generally avoided throughout his career, precisely because his tactical genius depends on maneuver and envelopment rather than straightforward attrition. What decides the battle is exactly the factor that decided Cannae, deployed now against Hannibal rather than for him. Cavalry superiority on the flanks, which allows Scipio's Roman and Numidian horsemen to defeat their Carthaginian counterparts, pursue them from the field, and then return to strike the rear of Hannibal's infantry line at the precise moment when the grinding infantry battle in the center has reached its point of maximum exhaustion. Hannibal's army, encircled in a manner that echoes his own encirclement of the Roman army at Cannae 8 years earlier, collapses. Hannibal himself escapes the battlefield, one of the very few Carthaginian commanders in the war's history to survive a defeat of this magnitude. But the army that has terrorized Italy for over a decade ceases to exist as an effective fighting force in a single afternoon. The peace terms that follow Zama, negotiated in 201 BC, are designed by Scipio and the Roman Senate not merely to end the war, but to permanently eliminate Carthage's capacity to wage a third war of this scale. And the mechanism chosen for this permanent neutralization is economic and naval, rather than purely territorial. Carthage is stripped of its overseas territories entirely. Spain, already lost during the war, is formally ceded, along with the Mediterranean islands that had provided Carthage with additional resources and strategic depth. The Carthaginian war fleet, reduced to a token force of 10 ships, is effectively eliminated as a strategic instrument, ending Carthage's centuries-long identity as the dominant naval power of the Western Mediterranean, and removing the capability that had allowed Carthaginian commerce and military logistics to project power across the sea for generations. Carthage is forbidden from waging war anywhere, even in self-defense against its neighbors, without first obtaining Roman permission, a clause that converts Carthage from a sovereign power into a dependent client state whose foreign policy is permanently subordinated to Roman approval. And Carthage is required to pay an indemnity of 10,000 talents of silver over 50 years, a sum calibrated to be burdensome enough to prevent Carthage from accumulating the capital reserves that would be necessary to rebuild a military establishment capable of threatening Rome again, while not so crushing as to immediately destroy the Carthaginian economy in a way that would eliminate Rome's ability to extract the payment at all. This is the strategic insight that distinguishes the peace of 201 BC from a simple military victory. Rome does not attempt to destroy Carthage outright in 201 BC. That outcome will not occur until the Third Punic War concludes in 146 BC, half a century later, driven by a different generation of Roman calculation. What the Peace of 201 BC does instead is surgically remove every instrument of power that had made Carthage capable of fighting Rome to a near standstill for 17 years. Its navy, its overseas territories, its capacity to recruit mercenary armies at the scale Hannibal had commanded, and its sovereign freedom to make war without Roman consent. Carthage is permitted to remain wealthy. Carthaginian commercial activity recovers remarkably in the following decades, generating enough revenue that Carthage pays off its 50-year indemnity in just 10 years and offers to pay the remainder in a lump sum. An offer Rome refuses precisely because a rapidly recovering Carthaginian treasury is more useful as an ongoing source of tribute than as a debt paid off early. But Carthage remains wealthy only within a framework that has eliminated every mechanism by which that wealth could be converted back into the military capability that produced Hannibal's invasion. Hannibal himself, in the years following Zama, attempts to reform Carthaginian civic institutions to prevent the kind of financial corruption among the Carthaginian aristocracy that had, in his view, starved his Italian campaign of the reinforcements and supplies that might have allowed it to succeed. His reforms are effective enough and threatening enough to entrenched Carthaginian interests that his domestic political enemies eventually denounce him to Rome as a continuing threat, forcing him into exile in 195 BC. He spends the remainder of his life moving between the courts of Hellenistic kings, who are, in various ways, hoping to use his military talent against Rome, and he dies by poison around 183 BC, rather than allow himself to be captured and handed over to Roman authorities, who have never stopped viewing him, even in his powerless exile, as a threat that must eventually be eliminated. What the war between Scipio and Hannibal ultimately demonstrates, and what the peace of 201 BC crystallizes into permanent institutional form, is that battlefield genius, however complete, operates within economic and logistical constraints that determine whether tactical victories can be converted into strategic outcomes. Hannibal wins nearly every battle he fights across 15 years of campaigning, and loses the war because his victories never address the structural sources of Roman resilience: the manpower base of Italy, the fiscal capacity of the Roman treasury, the naval and commercial infrastructure that Rome can rebuild faster than Hannibal can destroy it. Scipio, by contrast, wins the war not by matching Hannibal's tactical brilliance on equal terms in Italy, where Hannibal's advantages were greatest, but by identifying and systematically dismantling the economic and logistical foundations: the Spanish silver, the Numidian cavalry, the Carthaginian home territory itself, on which Hannibal's entire campaign depended, before finally confronting him in a battle where Scipio had assembled every structural advantage that Hannibal had previously held. Zama is not merely the battle where Rome finally defeats Hannibal. It is the moment when Rome demonstrates that it has learned, more completely than Carthage ever managed, the lesson that wars between great powers are decided by whoever controls the deeper economic architecture of military capability, and that the general who understands this will eventually defeat even the most brilliant tactician who does not.